What's a sign that somebody wasn't raised right? Lack of personal accountability. They can never admit wrongdoing on their part. It's always someone else's fault. Yes, totally. And it's often because immature parents don't realize they should model this behavior by apologizing to their children when they parents do something wrong. When you don't respect your kids, they can become disrespectful dicks. When my oldest was 2, 3, I apologized to him about something I don't remember what now in public. What I do remember is the awful woman I walked away from who was scolding me about how parents should never give away their power by apologizing to children. Now, teachers and myself always believe my kid. Why? Cause he always owns up to stuff and apologizes. Someone that does things to intentionally hurt another person's feelings after they've expressed that certain thing hurts their feelings. Person 1, I get angry if someone touches my hair. Person 2 touches it, haha. Are you angry? You give them a lift and they leave rubbish in your car. I forgot my candies and trash in a carpool 6 years ago and I still remember it. The driver rushed us out because he made a mistake, to be fair, but my ducking brain won't forget it. Who are the guys who spit out their chewing gum into urinals? I see this all the time at work, and I work in a high-end corporate place. Do they think it dissolves and goes down the pipe? The janitor has to pick that out. I had a guy shit on the floor in the bathroom at my work, then apologize because I was working the shift, not my co-worker he hated. People are ducking weird, dude. I worked at a truck stop with 3 bathrooms, a men's, a women's, and a unisex single one in the trucker lounge. The stall in the men's was out of service because people don't understand what a reasonable amount of toilet paper is. Guy comes in, truck bathroom is occupied, goes to men's, stall out of service. Do you A, wait for the trucker room? B, just go to the women's, which is also just a single room and isn't used much, C, shit in the urinal, then come out and complain that I should lose my job because the stall is out of order? How they act as a boss when their employee messes up. Yelling and belittling shouldn't be your first option. This was what made me respect the absolute heck out of my manager. I made a mistake on a job a while back, like a big duck up, that cost us a large sum of money. I was fully expecting to get chewed out, and you duck up again, you're out the door. Because that's how previous managers had treated us. It's no wonder we had a horrific management and employee turnover rate for years. But no, he came over to the car I was working on, looked at what happened, figured out how the mistake was made, and we talked about it for a couple minutes. I was pretty upset about it because I'm usually not the type of tech who is negligent and makes mistakes. So when I do, it profoundly bothers me. He saw that. He listened to what I said, and he went through the process of getting replacement parts ordered for what I messed up. The next morning he came to me again and said, you know, I was thinking about you last night after I got home and thinking of what you could do to prevent this mistake from happening again in the future. Gave me a few suggestions for the future and closed the conversation with a pat on the shoulder and a we won't need to have this conversation again. Brother, I trust you. It was the most meaningful conversation I have ever had with a manager. I got the sense that he really wants to see his employees succeed and grow. It gave me confidence in a moment in which I had none left. This is how you be a leader, not a boss. A leader lends a helping hand and treats you like an equal. A boss treats you like a replaceable piece of meat. Best boss I ever had, and like a second father to me. Gave me the golden rule that I use as a boss now. Praise in public, correct, criticize in private. My favorite boss and current boss, because I'm lucky to have an amazing one for my first job, did exactly this. When I ducked up, he'd call me to the back and tell me what I did wrong. No correcting in front of my coworkers and customers, but genuine teaching moments. He always made sure that my coworkers knew I was a good worker and made it known when I was there to watch people's performance. That man was like a father to me as well. When I was in a tough spot, he gave me 60 cash. He bought a worker new shoes because her roommate still hers. He gave rides if you needed them and ordered food to the store at lunchtime. At breakfast sometimes he'd bring donuts. This is a little above minimum wage. By the way, he didn't have to do this. I think we are definitely easily replaced. as there's a high school down the street and most of the workers are high schoolers. But he still took care of us like we were permanent. I hope I get to have a nice final day. I'm shift lead and didn't get to work for my 1 year mark because of COVID. I really want to go back this summer just to say goodbye. This is probably the best environment I've been in ever. If they make messes in public areas and just wander off leaving trash in the theater, not flushing, leaving the cart in a parking space. Edit forgot the theater thing is the norm in Britain. I meant in general. Leaving a mess where it's not supposed to be. Working in a theater, I can tell you a good number of people treat the place as their personal dumping ground. And that's apart from the people who make big messes and just skedaddle. I'm talking people who spill their XXL soda and just walk out. I'm had the pleasure of walking into a theater and finding 3 separate pools of vomit. Like WTF people, honestly. Disrespecting people for doing their job. I worked at an office supply company while I was in college. Let's call it paperclips. I had a full-time position inventory specialist on top of going to school full-time. And I was going through a bit of a rough patch. During back to school in late September, this little girl comes in escorted by what I can only describe as an alpha Karen. The kid started pouting and saying she didn't want to go back to school. I was busy running my cycle count report when AK pointed at me and said something along the lines of, if you don't go to school you'll end up working at paperclips like this guy. Oh, that made me mad. I don't remember exactly what I said in response, but it went essentially like, "Madam, I graduate in 3 months from university less than 1 mile from paperclips and have a job lined up at local hospital. I hope she works here or at MacDoodle so maybe she'll learn the respect you didn't teach her." Not nearly as elegant or eloquent at the time, but you get it. The only time I've ever been written up for a customer interaction and I don't regret it. Edit, this isn't quite as neat of a closer as the above, but I do want to clarify my GM was awesome and didn't write me up. At paperclips all customer complaints went through the district manager, so the write-up came from the DM. My GM told me not to worry about it because I was leaving soon anyway. I miss that guy sometimes. I work with a great administrative team in my chosen career field now, too. But I don't think I would have survived retail as long as I did without the support of good managers. Yes, manager, I have a complaint. This employee defended herself when I was being incredibly rude and I demand you fire her. What a bitch. I know someone who was fired because a guy screamed and shouted at her because he was pissed off about the price of popcorn in the cinema she worked at. He was embarrassed when she started crying. She was only a teenager. Rather than apologize, he just sneered at her. "For duck's sake, don't take it so personally." She replied that, "I don't know how else you expect me to take personal abuse." He complained that she was rude. She was fired. This week boss for not backing up his staff. How they treat people from whom they have nothing to gain. Retail will tell you about 75% of people exhibit this sign. I worked in retail. It's more like 20% in my experience. But you remember those more on a bad day. I'd say 10% are assholes 24/7. And 70% are one bad day away from screaming at some random teenager whenever they feel inconvenienced and never feeling guilty about it. My daddy's in that 70% for sure. He once yelled at a random guy and told him to tell his wife not to speak to him because she asked him to calm down after yelling at the poor Chinese woman at Panda Express. I will never go into that building with him. Edit, just remembered another time one of his fast food orders got very slightly messed up, and after getting home and taking everything out, he said I ought to go back and tell them how worthless they are. Pretty cool guy. They always portray themselves as a victim. Nothing is ever their fault and somebody is always out to get them. The ultimate entitled boob. And not the good kind of boob either. Let me share a story. Part of my job is to fingerprint people for background checks. I come to work, look at my appointments, and then do them. I had just finished a 10:30 apt and was about to call my 10:40 when I was interrupted by this daughter and father combo. They said they had been waiting for 30 minutes and when would we get to them? I looked at my schedule. Strange. I had taken everyone in on time, so I figured they were just here super early. I ask them for their app paper or screen from their phone and they go crazy. You make us wait and then you don't trust us. Listen, I just need to see it so that I can see what time is your apt. No, you bring your boss out here right now. From prior experiences, I knew there was no reasoning with these type of customers, so I asked the receptionist to call for my boss while I bring in my 1040. My boss is able to retrieve their ID and we call headquarters to find out when in God's name is their apt. Turns out, they didn't even have one for that day. Turns out, they had a 10 AM app 3 months ago. In another city, in another state. I'll let them know about this, and they go no, we have one today. So I'm show them my schedule. Look, you're not on here. You don't have an app.ae. It's right there. Learn how to do your job. You wasted our time. Her name is right there. I look at her ID and it's a totally different name. The daughter, who at this point is crying and playing victim, trying to blame us along with the father goes, "That's my nickname on your schedule." I look at her blankly. So you're telling me you came to get fingerprinted through a government organization, and instead of using your real name, you used a nickname which bears zero resemblance to your legal name. She starts wailing, "It's not my fault. It's not my fault." They started threatening to sue us because we won't fingerprint them, because their daughter is missing work hours, because we're keeping her here. My boss and I just look at each other and smile, realizing the idiots that we are dealing with. He tells them, "We are not paying you guys anything." The dad starts making a scene again. I'm going to call her employer and tell them not to bring customers to your facility anymore. My boss is okay with that. Truth be told, doing fingerprinting was just a service to our county. They actually lose money every day paying me for the position, because the fingerprint company paid so low we are just third-party contractors. Anyway, eventually we give them the boot. But I still remember the girl wailing away, "It's not my fault. It's not my fault." And all I could do was glare at her with a look that said, "It really is your ducking fault." Duck parents who don't teach their children to take responsibility. One rule for me, one rule for you. Parents that mess up on the discipline accountability stage of parenting produce these people. The word no just means throw a fit and be as obnoxious as you can be until you get your way. No does not mean that rules are rules or someone's job might be on the line. They're the important one, not anyone else. Not respecting personal boundaries. If you're wondering why someone has these sorts of issues, take a look at their parents. How they treat animals and people without power. They don't take responsibility for their actions. They litter. If you throw your shit on the floor, then you have 1, no respect, and 2, you're a tramp. I know a few of these types of people, and they tend to have one or more of the following traits. They are disrespectful to everyone, not just authority figures. Watch how they treat customer service or retail staff. They have no manners in general, or only use manners when they absolutely have to in order to preserve their own interests. They are cruel to people and or animals, and laugh at the suffering of others. They are selfish. They destroy things, steal, and cheat. Some also commit more serious crime. They expect handouts from everyone. They shirk hard work and responsibility whenever they can. They complain a lot, and constantly act like they are a victim. They are terrible parents to their own children. Turning conversation back to themselves at all cost. Being a good listener is a sign of a person raised well. Edit to clarify. I don't mean quiet or a doormat. I mean generous, empathetic, supportive and curious. Good follow-up questions without making it about oneself, etc. They never say please or thank you. They don't know how to do normal household stuff. I've seen people that don't even know how to make their own coffee or clean a toilet. Edit, I only mentioned making coffee as an example. If you don't know how to make coffee because you don't drink it, that's fine. Always pay attention to how someone treats service industry workers, animals, and young children. They apologize for every little thing. Probably a sign that they grew up with abusive parents that got mad over anything and everything. They blame others for everything, even things that have no blame to place. In their spare time they dress up like a bat and beat up the mentally ill. They whistle, snap their fingers, or make that PS sound to get their server's attention in a restaurant. I'd say on the other end of the spectrum, if someone is anxious about simple social interactions, like sharing their opinions, not putting the cart back at the grocery store, they gossip about others and will be vindictive behind people's backs, but pretend to be sweet to their face.